Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us for 15 minutes right here on KCTV. My guest today is King County Councilmember Bob Ferguson. Councilman Ferguson, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk about a couple things. The first thing we'd like to talk about is some work that you are doing to better fund mental health services here in King County. Now, you are the budget chair for 2007, so you do have your hand on the purse. And one of the things that you've been talking about is putting together basically a better framework to fund mental health services. Maybe explain a little bit what you're working on.
That's exactly right. A lot of people don't realize that one of King County's biggest operations is the King County Jail, of course. And unfortunately, King County's jail has a mental health population that is actually second only to Western State Hospital, that there are so many mentally ill who are going through our criminal justice system. And what's happening is they are having very long stays in our jails that are disproportionate to someone who has the same offense who does not have a mental illness. There's lots of reasons for that, but the numbers are troubling. To give you one example, if you commit an offense, you'd have an average stay of 20 days. A person with a mental illness who has exactly the same offense would stay in our jail for 150 days.
Now, why is that?
There's a lot of reasons for it, and we're undergoing some research now in a plan that's going to better answer that question. But what we think it is a combination of factors. It takes a long time for a competency hearing to be held. That doesn't make it right, but for right now, it does take a while for that to happen. A lot of these folks are homeless. They can't afford bail. There are a variety of reasons and circumstances that cause it, but that doesn't make it right. We're putting together a plan. We'll get a report back in June, giving us that framework you referred to get a sense of the population, what the troubles are, and what's keeping us from having a better system.
So just to back up procedurally, when someone is arrested for an offense, if there are mental health issues, the case will not go forward until these mental health issues are resolved. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So what's happening is someone will then, with a mental illness, will be sitting in our jail not getting the treatment that they need while awaiting the competency hearing, for example, or to go through our therapeutic courts or our drug courts. So they sit there essentially warehoused in our jail, not getting the treatment. That's costing taxpayers money, and from a social justice standpoint, it cannot be sustained. It's not right.
And so I understand the first step in this process is a mental health or competency evaluation. About generally, how long would that take on average for a person to receive that evaluation?
Well, right now we're doing a plan that will lay out how long this is taking, because we're trying to get a better handle of what's not working with our system and how we can improve it. And that plan, which is a very detailed plan, we've been working on it for months. We're expecting it back in May or June. Will give us the framework of exactly where the system isn't working and what we can do better to improve it.
Do you think it's a matter of money? Is it a matter of resources, of mental health professionals being available? What do you think is some of the issues that you'll be addressing in terms of what would be available to serve these people?
I think it's going to be a combination of factors, but I think it will be hard to escape the conclusion when this report comes out that some sort of financial investment will be necessary. That the system isn't working. I think there are things we can do around the margins to improve the system with the existing resources we have, and we are doing that and will continue to do that. However, the state legislature gave all the counties in Washington State the ability to increase the sales tax by 1/10 of a penny in order to fund mental health programs like this. 5 counties have already done that, including Spokane County.
When was that authorization given?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yes,
okay.
and so Spokane County, for example, is the largest county so far that has actually increased that sales tax to use those dollars for these kinds of programs. So counties are acting on this, and King County, I think, will need to take a serious look at that. The cost to the average taxpayer, the average household, is about it's a penny on a $10 purchase, to put that in perspective.
I would imagine that the recidivism rate for someone with mental health issues, it's much higher for those without. Is it true?
Yes, and what's happening is we're seeing people cycle through our criminal justice system or cycle through emergency hospitals like Harborview, for example. And again, the cost to taxpayers is tremendous, and we're not solving the underlying problems for those individuals.
Now, aside from the mental health treatment professionals, we also have a mental health program that is sort of a alternative to prosecution when there are competency issues. Is that something that will also be included in the overall plan?
Absolutely. In fact, the plan specifically is bringing in folks from the prosecutor's office, the courts, the executive's office, every branch of King County that deals with these issues, is coming together to put this plan together. And so a big focus will be these courts that you're talking about that get alternative treatment for people who need that. Now, again, we're talking about people who are nonviolent offenders, who are not a threat to people. And in fact, our jail director was quoted in the paper recently talking about how we're warehousing people who really are no threat for the most minor of offenses just because the system doesn't have the resources to better address the problem.
Right. The players involved, you mentioned, the judges, the prosecutors, the defense bar, all the professionals, the mental health counselors.
Correct.
Everyone is involved in this?
That's right. And what's really been encouraging for us to see at the council is everybody agrees that there's a serious problem. And one thing I've learned on the council is getting everybody to agree that there's a problem is not that easy. You know, often people disagree whether or not there's a problem. And in this case, everybody agrees that we've got a problem. And people have really devoted many, many hours to this plan to come up with some solutions to bring to the county council so we can decide what's the best way to go forward. But no, everybody is really engaged. All those players you're talking about are really committed, and we're excited about what can come out of this.
It seems like this is one prong in addressing our law and justice issues, specifically jail space, where we have a limited amount of jail space. We have more and more offenders, it seems like, every year, and people are just simply spending more time in the jail facilities when there are alternatives. And again, we are talking about the nonviolent offenses. So this is one solution. This is part and parcel of many solutions to start emptying out these jails and looking toward alternatives for the nonviolent offenders when there are issues such as mental health or alcohol-related issues.
That's exactly right. In fact, it's been part of a larger effort that's been going on at the county council. Before I came on the council in 2004, Councilmember Larry Gossett, who's now chair of the King County Council, has been a real leader in this effort to take a look at our criminal justice system, take a look at the people who are there, and see if there are ways to get alternative treatments that will be cost-effective and avoid recidivism and actually improve lives as well. So Councilmember Gossett in particular has been a real leader on this, and you're absolutely right that this effort is a continuation of that overall effort.
So at this point, it's this program or this initiative is in the planning stages. You're putting together a structure.
That's correct.
At this point, with all the players involved. Later on, we'll be talking about the funding issues. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. We've had one status report on the plan. Another status report will be coming up soon. And then in May or June, we'll have the final report on our status of our criminal justice system as it applies to the mentally ill and the chemically dependent. At that point, we'll be having some options on investments. Are we going to need to increase the sales tax? What can we do with our existing revenues to improve the situation? At that point, you're absolutely right. We'll be looking at the revenue side.
And the reception from the players involved, it's been positive, correct?
It's been great. I recently wrote an op-ed for the Seattle Times about this issue, and the response from the public to that op-ed has been tremendous compared to other op-eds I've written on various subjects. This one really seemed to strike a chord. So many people have someone in their family or a friend who suffers from mental illness or chemical dependency, and so many people wrote to me, including friends who I did not know they had an uncle or a sibling who suffered from mental illness, and people really shared a lot of personal stories. So I think it really struck a chord that people want to see us take a path to improve the lives of these individuals.
Well, certainly I think it would touch home in some other ways when many of us have been walking down the street and we have seen people who appear to possibly have some mental health issues. Now, they're not always committing crimes, but clearly there's an issue there.
Yes, and you know, it's interesting. After college, I spent a year with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. I was director of an emergency services office down in Portland, Oregon, in an inner city environment. And in the course of that, helping people, and a number of the folks, it was obvious to me that some folks had suffered from some mental illness. And it was clear to me they were cycling through different programs, but they really weren't getting the treatment that they needed. So I just promised myself that if someday I was in a position to do something about it, I would try and do that. And so now that opportunity has presented itself.
And here you are.
That's
now,
right.